Okay, so the right side creeps. The left side, this stick, has just a little bit of slop in the bolt on the pin. This bolt goes into this pin, it goes down to this lever. That is a dampener. The other end, that's rigid mounted back here on the frame. This is the control valve for the pump. So when you pull the handle, this moves or push it. So this cylinder is a dampener, I think. Like this one, it's very tight, meaning there's no slop in the, you can't feel it, but the only slop is that little bolt wiggling right there. This one is the exact same way. You got the handle, the rod goes back to the arm back here. Now, that dampener is flipped, so it's rigid mounted to the frame up here. I don't know if you can see the space in that. This one has that much slop in the stick, and when you see that whole thing's moving. So I think the dampener's bad. Now I've already adjusted the travel speed because the right stick, if you held it wide open driving, the left stick turned more. So I adjusted these here. So now they travel. It travels backwards and frontwards with the sticks at full throttle, like meaning full travel on the stick. But this one has that kind of slop in it, and when it does that, I think that's wore out. I don't know for certain. I also want to know if yours has remote hydraulics on it, because there's two pumps here that, I don't know if you can zoom in, see up there. There's that W joint that's the shaft drive from the engine. That's the flywheel. Can't see my finger, but that's the flywheel. I don't know if you can see the teeth up at the like 3 o'clock position. So that was the flange I built. It's got the W joint deal. It drives the first pump. This pump is for the right side. This pump, they're in line, they're tandem. That pump does the left side, and then at the end is a hydraulic pump. And that runs, this hose feeds your valve bank over here. You have two cylinders on it, or two ports. The one is your up and down, and the other one is the tilt. I think the up and down is the big one here, and then the tilt, or the curl on the bucket is the small one. And then so this bottom hose, a finger in there, goes into the valve bank, pressurizes it. Those rods are on pivots that the very, very bottom, probably can't see it. If you move the foot pedal, it'll actuate the valve. And then it comes through the valve. This is the return. It goes back to the sump, follows back around here, and then up into the filter, and then from the filter back into the reservoir. This is identical to yours. You might have bigger motors, bigger pumps. Oh yeah, so anyway, then the motor is down here. There's the motor. I've got this front cover off because this gear is for the parking brake. When you press the foot pedal, it's kind of upside down, you press the pedal, it pulls this rod that pulls that back. When you do that, I don't know if I can get it in a picture, this rod right here will lock into these teeth on the very, very back side. So anyway, this gear had fallen off and it was laying down in the skid plate. So there's a big skid plate that covers all this shit underneath. I got that off. So I would pull this off. I got a keyway in here. You can almost barely see it. And this bolt's loose. I went to grab a ratchet wrench so I can tighten this back up, tighten this bar up. Because the thing runs great. It drives great. It fucking does wheelies like no tomorrow. I have no bucket on it because I'm building that quick attach plate, and I'm waiting on, I have to get a reamer to ream these out so I can put in oil light bushings. I've got the bushings, I've got the ears to be welded on to my quick attach plate. I got the pins, I got the pins for the tilt cylinder. Got all new tires on it. The back ones are on it when I got it. They're filled, they're heavy as shit. The front ones are light. I built These are 50 pounds a piece. They're 1.25" plate. There's 2 of them. New Holland stacked them. I think there was 3 or 4 on each side. I just got done. These are lower radiator mounts. I still have to drill another hole in this one. I built these out of angle iron for the. I've got the boom down right now, but I'll open it up, take another video, show you all the mounts and shit I made. And then I have another 60-pound plate to go on the back. I actually have 2 of them if I want to stack them. I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet. But right now, this thing does stupid wheelies. I modified, this is the original radiator, upper radiator mount. The air cleaner also mounts right in here, which I still need to get the inlet hose for it. Got the pressure switch out of it. The pressure switch it's normally open, so when you turn the key on, the buzzer goes mee, and then the light on the instrument cluster comes on for hydraulic pressure. And then once it makes pressure, I got the wires taped up here so they don't work on anything. Once it meets pressure, that switch closes. Or I'm sorry, it's a normally closed switch. It's closed when there's no pressure to it. You start it up, the switch opens and lets you know everything's good. But it was leaking. It was leaking at the where it was flared together. So let's see, red wire here. I wired in a relay for the block heater. Yeah, there's the relay. This is a 30-amp circuit breaker I just put on it just because I'm weird. The throttle shafts. This was the original throttle shaft. I just extended it down to the side of the pump, and then I used the original choke shutoff, which is this rod, or the original choke rod is now the shutoff. Eventually I'm going to wire in a fuel shutoff solenoid. You can't really see it from the side, but there's I can't get my hand in there because of the sidebar. There's 2 rods down in here. This one here is the fuel shutoff, so you want to shut it. You just ka-tink, and it shuts off. And then the bottom one there is the one that comes up to the pivot for the throttle. So I had to play around and lengthen that so you had a decent stroke for the throttle. I had to build the exhaust to clear the mount. I still have this a little loose. And I welded in a flex pipe. This I'm going to end up changing. This thing is loud as shit when it's like full bore. But I just tack welded the side of this clamp to the frame so I can still take the U-bolt section off. I actually need to trim that. Even though the boom's all the way down, you know, it's got a 1/4 inch or so. Had to custom make a couple, these are 1-inch hoses. The one that was on it was like 3-inch or 2-inch. It was in the gas mower. This fucking radiator was out of that Hustler lawnmower that I got the engine with. So I got the alternator wired in. The lower radiator hose, probably can't see it because my phone's being weird. The oil filter, the outlet, I'm gonna try to get my fingers down in here. I used a 90-degree bypass hose from Napa, and then I spliced it just like I did up top. These are 2 bypass hoses that I cut and then spliced together with a 1-inch nipple. I wired in a little Mr. Gasket fuel pump down there, so it comes out of the tank into this filter housing, out of this filter housing through the pump. I wanted to filter it before the pump. This is a 30 micron Raycor that the old 25 kWm Q generators had. We scrapped a couple. I ended up buying 1 or 2 of these housings off of eBay. And they threw out a couple of them filters years ago when they were doing inventory, so I grabbed a few of those filters. Then it comes out of that, and then it goes into another filter down here that your Perkins is probably very similar. It's a little spin-on. I don't know the number. I got a Napa filter on it. But that came with the engine, the Kubota engine, and it's a 5 or a 7 micron. So I'm just using the Radiator as like a water separator. I still got to button up all the wiring, make everything, all the wire looms and everything back here. See the bolts, where all the factory harness was. And then the fuel line, this is right here where my thumb is the return line coming off the injector. I've got it on right now because I wasn't sure how I was running it. It comes out of the injector, it goes around here and goes right there. So I'm gonna come around here. I don't know how the larger machine fuel tanks are, but the fuel tank is here, sending unit, and then over here. It's cut out, it's U-shaped in the middle for all the pumps. So because of that, for vapor lock or whatever, it had this small little crossover that feeds that side and it feeds that side. So what I end up doing was I teed it, try to get in there and zoom in there. I teed it, and then my return line comes in right here. And seems to be running fine. I've put about an hour and a half on the meter so far. Those lights I put in were from Tractor Supply. They are stupid bright. I don't remember how many lumens they are. I think my neighbors are going to hate me. But I'm going to sit down here. I wired in a Kubota ignition switch. So it's, I don't know if this thing was going to zoom or not. Got the Kubota key there. The fuel gauge does not work yet. I haven't tore apart the sender. And the meter reads 2591 on the skid steer. I'm not going to start it because I don't have the covers and shit on it, and I'm sitting on it. But you turn it on. See, I had that switch jumped out, so it's not hooked up. Normally this light comes on, and then the buzzer. And then on the Kubota ignition switch is a Kubota BX switch. In between the on position and start is the glow plug. So if you hold it, I wired in a little LED. It's a little trailer. You drill like a 3/4 inch hole and push in. But I don't know if you can hear the fuel pump running or not. I feel it vibrating, but it should fire right up. Yep. It is. Cable. Shut it off. Eventually I'm going to wire in as a fuel shut-off solenoid, so you turn the key off. Because a couple times now I've left the key on and the fuel pump just runs. And it hasn't drained the battery yet, but... So, quick little rundown. I don't know if I'll be able to send this to you through iMessage or not. I might have to wait till I get home. If not, I'll put it on YouTube, send it to you. But yeah, if you have any thoughts on that, if you've messed with yours or not, I think it's that control valve or the control stabilizer or what. I don't know. I don't have any manuals or PDFs of parts on this thing. I've just kind of been winging it. And I made my own engine mounts and the adapter plate, and just kind of went for nothing on it. I do know that I saw a copy online. The hydraulic system uses 30 weight oil. I don't know if it's 1030 or 530. I'm probably going to switch that over to like a high guard. But yeah, the thing runs good. I've heat cycled it quite a few times. I got a few things that I got to button up as far as like fuel lines and shorten up some hoses, and everything was cut long because originally it was a 2-cylinder Continental and now has a Kubota 3-cylinder. It's a D1105. I think that's it. Yep. Glow plugs work, fuel pump works. You know, it's stupid stuff. I've got a fuel leak right here because the guy I bought it from dropped the washer off of it. So I've just got a temporary one in it, but it still leaks. This has the built-in industrial style fuel shut-off. The guy that I bought the mower from said this was bad. I haven't checked it. What I'll probably end up doing is mounting one off of like a Kubota mower. It's a single wire hookup. It pulls in on power, key switch power, and stays on. So I'll probably end up doing that. And I think they wire in like a 15-second timer. So after you shut off the power, it closes and it holds. It'll hold for 15 seconds before it opens back up to ready to start it. I've got the lift pump wired in. Don't know if it works. It was bypassed when I got the engine. It was packed full of mud and everything else. It's got a miniature primer. And see, now it feels like, maybe now that I've ran it, I can't get my hand in the lower hole. The boom's in the way. But it feels like it has pressure on it now. Whereas when I first hooked it up, it did not. So you can see the pump's a little wet up there. And all these hoses are long. They need trimmed up, shortened. But I didn't know what kind of length I needed on stuff with, you know, the clearance of the rod linkages here. And these, when I first put it together, I made these rods. I welded washers on the back side. And on the stop, every now and then, this thing will push in, and it stops right here. If you pull it out, it goes down just a tad farther to actually shut it off. So I'm either gonna have to put another washer in there, or there's not a lot of room in there for. It's meant to have a thread in it, and then like a ball stud. I have a spare ball stud laying around, but I don't have the female end to it. So eventually I'll end up doing that, and this is 1/4-inch rod that can be tapped to 1/4-28 or 1/4-20 for those different ball studs. It'll also space it out a little more because it's all the way in. It's a little close to this is the throttle. This one, because of that spring-loaded mechanism, I can't pull this one. But yeah, that's what I've been working on. And here you can see the flywheel. I'm gonna end up building a guard, I think, for the back of the flywheel on the top half, just because. Let's see if I can get in here. Just because it's wide open. That's the flange I built. You can actually see a little mismatch right now. It's offset to the driver's side about 1/4 inch right now, and it doesn't seem like much, but 1/4 inch on the front of the engine is the double cardigan. The joints don't hit, everything's fine, it's perfectly in line. I don't know if you can see the mounts or not. I need to slot that bolt in the bottom, because I made those mounts. I had to actually make 3 sets of these mounts because that plate on the bottom where they're bolted onto, it's not parallel. So I only took measurements off the front, made 4 of them. You know, I made 2, test fitted, everything was good. Made 2 more, assumed that bottom plate was on a parallel plane. Well, it wasn't. So the ass of the motor sat up way too high. So I had to make another set. Made that set, dropped them down, and I don't remember what happened with that set. So anyway, after the 3rd rendition, we got everything good. And when I mocked everything up, the mounts that I bought, I probably cannot get a picture of this easily. I'll try to stick the phone up in here. Don't think I can see it. Yeah, just barely. I can't move the phone back any farther. But it's a rubber isolation mount for the bottom of the engine. When I originally put it together, I didn't have them. When I mocked everything up, marked all the holes, I never had those tight. So when I tightened them up and they compressed, and maybe the bolt wasn't in there just square, because I drilled the holes really tight. I didn't want a lot of slop in it because 3-cylinder engines typically vibrate quite a bit. So anyway, I need to go back and redo that. But once I got it running, I was all excited about it. That it is, I've measured it. It's the front of the engine's over 1/4 of an inch and the back's closer to 3/8. So it's in just a little bit of this way orientation. The first set of mounts I made were, I can't grab the phone here, these big pucks on each side. It had tabs that came off of, it had a guard that was welded around this rear plate. It wasn't on this engine. And it had feet that it came back and landed here. I originally cut that plate all apart and bolted it to this kubota plate. There's accessory bolt holes inside, in the back of the block, and 2 behind the flywheel, like throughout it. And had made it, everything was good. And then I had to come up with that adapter, and I couldn't find anything. The original kubota setup used a coupler, almost like a clutch plate, that bolted to the engine itself, and then it had female splines on it that slid right into the pump. So I couldn't find the pieces parts. You could buy the actual coupler, but I needed the rear bell housing off the kubota that coupler bolted into, and then I would have had to change the starter setup, and because that coupler would not have bolted to this flywheel. This flywheel was it's what they would consider an industrial engine. It was out of a Hustler mower. So anyway, long story short, that flange that is welded right where my finger is, all the way around, that flange was a 3-bolt flange that bolted to a flex plate that bolted to that Continental flywheel. I took that flex plate off, and this has 3 or 4 bolt holes on the face of it, and it's not the bolt head that you can see right there. That bolt head that you see right there is what bolts that assembly to the kubota flywheel. Let's see if I can get down in here. So, see if I can get I'll get a wrench. There's a pointer. All right, so this, the face of the wrench is touching, or the tip. That flange was a V-belt pulley on the Kubota engine. And then on the back side of that pulley was a big long tapered shaft that ran to an electric clutch to turn the mower on and off. Long story short, where the V-belt was, where the wrench is now and the bead of weld is there, I ended up cutting with a Sawzall. I cut that in the middle of that V, and I cut that off, and then set this flange over top of it, and it was the same diameter. I don't remember what it was, 3 inch, 3 1/4. It was near perfect. So I took that PTO flange off the Kubota engine that I had cut, where I cut the pulley off, and then took it to a buddy's and milled it flat. I took that flange that, yeah, you can't see it because I ground them down, but this double cardigan joint, this flange here is spline for the pump. All of that, the flange that's welded to the plate, double cardigan, and then the female flange with the splines, all of that was on the Continental engine. So all I did was weld that round 3 inch flange to that plate, and someday I'll make a video of how I did that. I took the Kubota flange that I cut off and milled, and I put it in a machinist lathe vise, or just a lathe chuck. But I have a lathe chuck, actually a buddy has it, and I'm building one now. Buddy welds pipe for the pipeline, and he calls it a rollout wheel. It's nothing more than a 5 inch or 6 inch lathe chuck that's mounted to a bench. You can adjust the jaws in or out, so you're able to put that outer flange on there. Because those flanges on the drive shaft, or the coupler, or the U-joint setup, the double cardigan setup, because the diameters were the same, I tacked them in place and took them over there. he spun it, and with the dial indicator, it was within 2,000ths run out. At that point, to me, 2,000ths is nothing. I wasn't cutting it all apart and risk being off 30,000ths or 20,000ths. So at that point, we welded it up. I ran 3 passes through it, 60-10 on the base pass, and then 70-18s to fill it. So everything turned out good. Anyway, this becomes a long-winded video of something I was going to send to my brother that I'm now going to have to put on YouTube. So I'm sure somebody else will comment. Since I didn't say anything at the beginning, it's a New Holland L454, 1987 or 1988, I forget. I bought it for $1,000. It had a rod through the block, and it was a 2-cylinder gasoline Continental engine. And I bought it with the sole intentions of putting a Kubota diesel in it. And I put a 30 horsepower Kubota 3-cylinder 1105 out of a Hustler 3400 or 5400 lawnmower. Drove to Indianapolis, like 5 hours away, and then proceeded to build all the mounts for it and change it over from gas to diesel. So I'm sure a lot of people comment on, oh yeah, you can't run gas or diesel in a gas tank, this, that, or the other. Yeah, sure you can. I've built front end loaders from scrap out of nothing, and fuel tank is fuel tank. If you clean out the old gasoline, rinse it out good, clean it out with diesel fuel or kerosene, you're still going to have gasoline vapors because gasoline physically attacks plastic, whatever. But she's 90% done. She's up and running, she's working, and I'm in the process now of fixing up all the minor details. I'm going to replace all the hoses. I'm going to add a remote hydraulic to it. So I'm looking at this now. I'm going to have to get a power beyond plug to stick in here, and then the new supply will be right here to feed another valve, because I'm building a grapple for it. Do I have a grapple? I have a set of forks, and I'm in the process of converting a Bobcat, I believe it's a 643 quick attach, to this unit, because the New Holland Universal or whatever New Holland called their own specific quick attach sucks. I was trying to find New Holland implements. They were great. If people haven't used one, you can unlatch it from the cab. You can lift it up just enough that they're a bottom lever. They switch up and down. You can reach it from right here, just by lifting this up a foot or so. Yeah, stupid basic things. It didn't have a window here. The other side was in, so I need to get some weather stripping, rough cut this to size. I built the exhaust from scratch, put a flex pipe in it. I need to change the filters on it. I did pull the strainer, which, in case anybody ever needs to pull a strainer. So you have 3 covers where your seat pan is. You have to take your seat pan off. Then you'll pull this pan off right here, and then you can unbolt this if you have to access any of the parking pin gears or anything like that. But the strainer for the hydraulic sump, and it's recommended that you do this every like 500 hours or 300 hours, or if you buy a machine, don't know anything about it, might be contaminated hydraulic system. This canister right here, this is a half inch square drive will fit in here. They don't recommend that you use like an extension from a ratchet because you have that ball in there, and sometimes it won't seat all the way, and you can round this out. It's also, you can fit a wrench on it, but you just unthread that. Clean all this up first. Clean all the grease off of it. Spray it down with brake part cleaner. Do whatever. Get it clean before you crack this open. And anything that drops down in there is now immediately in your hydraulic reservoir. So, nice long-winded video. And there's so many more things I could touch on, but there's this is a safety for the seat switch that actuates this solenoid. So when you're sitting on the thing, there's a seat sensor that closes this. It basically loops this. It's kind of like an operator presence switch on a lawnmower or anything else to let, so you can't operate the hydraulics when you're not sitting on it. So when I first got it running, this was disconnected. I totally forgot about it. I couldn't get the hydraulics to work. It would drive just fine, which makes no sense to me, because if you have it running, you're not on it, or you get out of the thing, you can bump these as you're getting out, and then the thing was gonna take off while you're half in and half out of it. You run yourself over. So all they did was, I think they might have done this because they knew you'd step out and you could possibly hit one of these while you were stepping out. So this disables that solenoid. It shuts off the flow at that solenoid. You cannot operate the bucket controls up or down until you either jump this out or you sit on the seat and it closes that switch. Mine, I changed the seat. When I changed the seat pan didn't work. So to get it running for simple purposes, I just jumped the thing out. But that has to be plugged in to be able to operate the hydraulics. So eventually I'm going to wire in excuse me. Eventually I'm going to wire in a toggle switch here with a light. So when if I want to have it running, I'll set the parking brake and then flip this on and jump out. So it won't be a full-on hydraulic brake like a lot of the newer equipment has. I mean, this thing's almost, let's see, 30-some years old now. So it's but it's a good running unit. I started repainting a few things on it. I'm gonna end up this winter. I'm gonna repaint the whole thing. It's got fairly low hours on it. Can you see that wheel? You know, the front wheels used to look the same. Cleaned them all up, 415 them, painted them. I just haven't done this one yet. The back ones were foam filled when I got them, and the front ones were actually different rims. They were the wrong offset, and they had 10.5 tires on it. And these are 27 by 850s. So eventually I'll end up getting 4 27 1050s, just because I like the wider footprint. But anyway, enough rambling. I'll post another video later. Angry Beaver out.